is my first day in my 30s. And I just keep thinking to myself, how did I get here so soon? To say that the last 10 years flew by would be quite the understatement, and I can't believe that my 20s are already over. I learned a lot in my 20s. If I could sum it up in a few words, I would say it was a decade of growth, change, and just learning. If you are in your 20s or you're about to be in your 20s, I thought I would share 20 things that I learned in my 20s so that maybe you can learn it from me instead of having to learn it for yourself. Not to say that you won't learn your own lessons in your 20s, because everybody does, but these are the lessons that I learned. This is not going to be in any particular order, but some of these things, and the first one is something that I learned pretty early on, like in the first 3 years of being 20, and that is that God's plan or timeline for your life is not going to be the same as his plan or timeline for someone else's life. Let me explain the backstory behind that. This is actually something that my mom told me when I was a senior in college, so I would have been around 22 years old. I was frustrated at the time. A lot of people I knew were getting engaged, they were going to get married right after graduation, and I wasn't, which is fine because everything happened in the time that it should. But that was something really hard for me at that time, was seeing everyone else kind of go on to that next phase of life, particularly like after graduation, and I wasn't. And even different situations since then, my life timeline has not been the same as everyone else's, and that is okay. Everything happens in the right time for your life as it should happen. And I guess I've also learned along with that it's really good to not try to force the time. Don't try to rush through the different phases of life, because you only get it once. That was a really big lesson for me. The next thing is that no one has it all figured out. No matter what decade of life you're in, we're all just kind of out here figuring it out, whether we're going through something and trying to figure a way out of that situation, or we're just trying to figure out what's next for life. We're all just out here trying to figure it out one day at a time. And I remember when I was a teenager seeing people in their 20s and thinking, oh my goodness, their life is all put together, they have things figured out. We don't. I'm 30 and I don't have things figured out, but I'm very well aware of that. But that was kind of a harsh reality that I learned. The next thing is that you don't have to post everything online or on social media, despite what it seems like. I learned this probably when I was 25. That was the year of COVID. And that was the rise of TikTok. And everyone is posting everything online, which is totally fine. If you want to do that, that is great for you. But you don't have to. And I remember that year, I went through and I deleted like 700 photos from my personal Instagram because I was just like, I don't even know why I posted this. I had the most random things up online. And so you don't have to post it all online. You are allowed to keep things to yourself for your own enjoyment. It doesn't all have to be blasted for the whole world to know.
Hello, it's Editing Abby, and I realized while I was editing that moving in a vehicle and trying to record is very loud in terms of background sound. What I said here was that distance is really hard, whether it's in a relationship with your family or with your friends, but it does help you to learn how to be intentional. I say that because I was in a long distance relationship with my now husband for almost 2 years before marriage, and then I moved across the country from my family and everyone I had known. So it's very hard, but you do learn to be intentional with those relationships, which is a really great lesson to learn. It's me again, because again, recording in a moving vehicle was a poor life choice. Here, I was talking about how quality is more important than quantity in terms of relationships. When I was a teenager, I didn't have a lot of friends, and I felt like that was wrong and there was something wrong with me. But as I got older, I did realize, especially in my 20s, that it's way better to have a few friends that you're really, really close to and that there is depth there with than it is to have a giant group of friends and be considered popular, if that makes sense. So, great lesson.
Just finished birthday brunch. Next tip, somewhat related. Balance is important in a variety of ways, whether that is having work-life balance, which I really struggled with the first few years into my teaching career, or whether that's having the balance of it's okay to eat unhealthy sometimes, but it's good to also eat healthy too. So balance in a variety of ways is really, really important in life. You'll never be fully prepared for whatever next thing happens in life, whether that is your first career or your first job, your first year of marriage and getting used to being married, or in my case, when I was in my 20s, a worldwide pandemic. There are just things in life that no matter whether you think you're ready for it or not, you might not actually be as prepared as you thought you would be. And you'll go through a lot of growing through those situations. This is probably cliche sounding, but it is real. Disconnecting is one of the best ways to connect, whether that is with the person you're married to, with your friends, with your family. I have found the times that I go deeper and really build my relationships with people are those times where we're not on our phone, we're not on social media. Sorry, I'm laughing because I see bunny ears. Um, and you're able to have real conversations and go into greater depth, not having your technology on you constantly at all times. It is the best way to connect. Sounds cliche, but it is very true, especially in a world where we are so connected constantly to everything happening in other people's lives across the country, across the world. The best way to connect with the people around you is to actually disconnect from what all the distractions are everywhere else. The next thing that I learned is that friends come and go in life, and that's just part of life. And that happened in my 20s, and there's nothing wrong with that. Your people will find you, and you'll find your people. Some people will stay, and some people will go. That's just how it goes. But I have made some really amazing friends in my 20s. We're on day 2 of being 30 because I did not finish this yesterday because I spent the evening with my family celebrating my birthday. Our next tip here, and this one I actually learned pretty early on, but I didn't really realize it until a couple years later, is that if you feel like a failure, it might be because you were in an environment where you were not set up to succeed. And so that doesn't mean you were a failure. You just weren't set up for success. Learn how to take care of your body because you only have one. And this can be in a variety of different ways that you can think about this. For example, 8 years ago, a little more than 8 years ago, I stopped drinking soda and I haven't had soda since then. As I got a little bit older, I realized the importance of eating real food, not just a bunch of processed food. And I also became aware of some of the things that are in the everyday products that we use that are endocrine disruptors or not great for your body in general. And so I learned how to be very conscious of those things throughout my 20s because I want to take care of my body to the best of my ability. And of course, that also includes getting good sleep, exercising, minimizing your stress, and all of that. But learning how to take care of your body in whatever way and capacity that you can is very important. And so I'm very glad that I learned that throughout my 20s in just various different ways and aspects. Change is challenging, but it can bring so much good. I think I said this at the beginning of my video that one of the words I would use to describe my 20s was change. And there were just so many changes, right? I graduated college, started my first year of teaching. That was a huge change. I stopped teaching. I did my master's degree, which was something I was never anticipating doing. Got married, moved across the country from everyone and everything I've ever known. I have taught a variety of different levels of math, and I did that for several years. And then last year, I left teaching, which is a really big change, and that was a hard change. And so I've always disliked change, and I always viewed it as a bad thing. But throughout my 20s, I really learned that there's a lot of good that can come from change, even though it is and it can be challenging. There can still be good, even if you don't see it right at that moment. You might see it later on, but there is good that comes from change. If you can hear chewing in the background, that is Benjamin eating hay, so my apologies. He's a very loud eater. The next lesson that I learned, and this is actually a more recent lesson, I learned this last year when I was 29. Slow down. I feel like I tried to rush through different parts of life, whether that was, oh, I want to be done with college, get on to the next thing, want to get through this school year, want to hurry up and get married, never realizing that like everything is supposed to happen as it should, and just enjoy where you are at while you're there. In another aspect of slowing down though, learning that you don't have to be super busy all the time and be rushing from one thing to the next thing, and to just take time for yourself, have some hobbies. I want to say probably when I was 26 or 27, I started getting back into reading, and that's a really great way to slow down. When I was 29, I started scrapbooking, so another really nice slow activity. You don't constantly have to be rushing, whether it's rushing through the phases of life or rushing in your daily life or weekly life. It's okay to just slow down. Growth can come from the hardest places. Some of my most challenging years of my 20s were when I was 23 and when I was 29, just because of different life circumstances that happened in those years, and they were really hard at the time. Looking back on it, that was a time where I grew a lot in different ways for each of those different years. I'm thankful for it. It's hard to go through hard times when you're in the middle of it, and you may not want to try to grow through it as you go through it, but there are lessons that you will learn in your 20s that will be in the hardest of times that you go through in life. And that's just part of life. As you go through things, you will grow through them. And that's a beautiful thing. It's like there's beauty that can come from pain and hard times. Something I wish someone would have told me when I was younger is that there is nothing that you can do that will ever make God love you more or less than he already does. I think during my teen years, I was always trying to do the right thing. I never wanted to disappoint my parents or other people. But there's nothing that you can do that will ever change God's love for you, which is a very beautiful thing, because I am a failure as a Christian. I go times where I'm really bad at reading my Bible, or times where I'm not praying, and there's other times where I'm great at it. I don't have to try to be perfect, and I definitely am not. But that was something I had to learn in my 20s. This is a very silly one, but it's okay to chop your hair off. It will grow back. When I was in middle school, I cut my hair pretty short, probably like right below the shoulder. And after that, I decided to like grow it out. And then I just constantly kept it long, only ever getting very small trims. And then when I was 25, I chopped it off, which was something that I really had to like contemplate for several months. Do something fun, do something new, like don't be scared of it. I am so glad that I did that. This is very, very simple. Less is more. We have lived in a very small apartment for almost 6 years now, since we got married. And with that, there's been a lot of getting rid of things or not getting things because we don't have the space. It really helps you be intentional with what you are keeping or what you are bringing into your home. It's helped me realize that you don't need everything that people on social media are telling you that you need in your life. It is okay to have less. It's okay to have a little compared to what you see online. You don't need everything. I'm very thankful for that lesson to just learn it's okay to have less, whether it's less clothes, shoes, makeup, less space, because those things are not really the things that matter in life in the grand scheme of things. This is an interesting lesson, and it's not to say that I was never told this growing up, but I really didn't learn it until my 20s. It's okay to feel. It's okay to feel your emotions. You don't have to bottle them all in. It's okay to express how you're feeling, whether you're sad and you want to cry, or whatever the feeling might be. When I was in high school, I used to like keep everything in and not like tell anyone how I was feeling, and that was not good for me. And so I always thought that like crying was a sign of weakness and that it was lame and I shouldn't do it. But God gave us emotions for a reason, and it's okay to feel those emotions. There have been lots of times, even in the last year, where I'm like, I just need to cry, and it's okay to cry. Or if you're really, really excited, don't let someone dim your light of excitement just because they might think it's silly. It's okay to feel excited for whatever you want to feel super excited about, but it's okay to feel those things. It was my birthday yesterday, and I saw my Facebook memories of years past, and I saw one from when I was turning 26. And in the post, I kind of alluded to dreading that birthday because I felt like I was officially old. And so I was really dreading turning 30 for several years because I felt like I was getting old. So the lesson here that I learned really in like the last couple of months right before I turned 30 is that I am not old. In the grand scheme of things, I'm still very young and I still have, Lord willing, a lot of life ahead of me. So even though there have been people in the last few weeks that have even said, oh my goodness, you're turning 30, you're getting so old, which is an odd thing to tell someone, I'm not. I'm still very young. So I wish I could go back and tell younger me, like, you're not old. Like, you're fine. This is just the beginning. All right, wrapping this up with my last thing, and this was a big thing, and I learned it about 3 to 4 months ago. I left teaching last June because I felt that that is what I needed to do. That was my next step. I didn't feel a peace going back into the classroom, and that was really hard. Coming to the end of the year was really hard because I had always dreamed of being a teacher. I loved teaching. I still love teaching. And I would love to go back into the classroom someday if that is what God's plans for my life look like. But my identity was so wrapped up in being a teacher. And when I left that, I was just like, who am I if I'm not a teacher? Like, I felt lost for a little bit. But through several months of just studying my Bible and reflecting on my experiences in life, even experiences as a teacher, I realized, and the lesson was, this is probably the biggest lesson that I learned. I am not what I do. My identity is not what I do. Unfortunately, I had placed my identity in being a teacher, and I felt that that is who I was. And teaching was my job, which was wonderful, but that's not who I am. Ultimately, I am a Christian first. Like, my identity is in Christ. You are not your job. You are not your sport if you're an athlete. You are more than that, and you were created for more than just that. That was a hard lesson to learn, but I'm glad that I learned it, and I'm glad that that is not what I'm finding my identity in anymore. Even though at the time of my 6 years of teaching, I didn't realize that that is what I was finding my identity in, but it was after a lot of reflection. Who I am is not what I do. We are ending this video at the perfect time because the sun is just about to set. If you made it this far in the video, I would love for you to like and comment. Maybe you are recently in your 20s or going into your 20s. If there's a piece of advice that you enjoyed, let me know. Or maybe you're already out of your 20s. If there's a piece of advice that you want to leave for someone else in the comments, feel free to leave it there so that people can feel encouraged. If you would like to stay tuned for future videos, don't forget to subscribe. I'm hoping to be more consistent with YouTube. I took like a 6-month hiatus at the end of last year, but it really is a hobby that I enjoy, so I'm hoping to kick it back up into gear this upcoming year. But I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.